I believe you'll see AJ against Deontay Wilder. I can't talk about Fury Usyk because I think it would have happened by now.
So you're suggesting you don't think it will happen?
There's something not quite right there for it not to have happened.
This is Fight Club. Come on in.
Hello, welcome to episode 7 of Fight Club with me, Gareth A Davies, via Boxing Social. I'm delighted to say joining me in the studio this week is the one and only CEO of Matchroom Boxing, Frank Smith. What a rollicking time we're going to have with him. All your questions asked and a big chat about the heavyweight division. Also joining us on this week's show, the Impressionist Tony Lapidus. That will be fun too. And the UFC legend that is Michael the Count Bisping. All that and more coming up on this week's show. Well, it gives me great pleasure for episode 7 to have a young legend in the studio, the CEO of Matchroom Boxing, Frank Smith. A warm welcome, Frank.
Thank you, mate. I've never been called a legend before.
I think you're a young legend. I think anyone that's been in the sport, but it's a term we use these days, isn't it? I mean, you've been in the sport, I think. I know there's on record as you being around Matchroom making tea from the age of 14, but I think 11, isn't it, that you started working for them? Work experience at 11. What were you doing?
The story
work
sounds
experience.
Better.
Go on then.
11 sounds better than I came up with. But 14, it's been 17 years now. So I started, I met Eddie Hearn at Rumford Greyhound track, selling raffle tickets, called him a tight bastard. Someone told me he had a Bentley. I was like, it was never really, I didn't care about sport. I just really liked money at that point. As a child, you know, when you're young, that's what you look up to. And I wanted to be a stockbroker, but someone said, he's got a lot of money, that guy. So I said, I'm going to go and work for him. And then I pestered him for a job for about 2 years.
How did you do that at that time? Is it phone calls? Because
it was my mum's email address, actually.
Okay.
I emailed him off of my mum's
so
email
Mrs.
address.
Smith.
Yes, Mrs.
So you got
Smith.
lots of emails from Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I started, we used to do a lot of poker, so I used to run at the events, like make teas, coffees, you know, pizzas, whatever. Made an absolute fortune. The poker players loved me. It was great, to be honest. I worked quite a few hours. But yeah, I just emailed him literally every week. And I remember saying to him, if you don't give me a job, I'll just go and get a job somewhere else. So it's up to you. And I remember when I started full time, so at 16, it was the 1st of September 2008. So it's coming up to 15 years this year. And I started and I was sitting in the office and they had nothing for me to do. I used to learn how to flip the poker chips, and I used to be like, I'll just go swimming now because we've got a swimming pool at the office. And for the first month or two, it was very much like that. Then I was 3 hours late and got a final warning after, from Eddie.
Not Barry.
Not Barry. Eddie.
Eddie was always the guy, was he?
Yeah.
He was always the one cracking the whip for you. Never Barry.
No, I mean, don't get me wrong. Over time, Barry became that, but I don't think Barry knew I existed for the first year or so, or until I got that final warning. But back then, it was a much smaller business. You know, we are still a family business, but back then it was probably 30 or 40 of us. So Eddie had brought in this 16-year-old kid, and I was making about £8 a day, I think, at the time. And he brought me in, and after 3 months I was late, and I think he thought, you cheeky little shit. You know, like, I've given you this opportunity, and after 2 or 3 months you've messed it up already. But after that, was never late again, and, you know, sort of sailed through the business. It's been a good ride.
Did you always think you were going to be... It's very entrepreneurial business, boxing. Were you always headed towards, I'm going to make it as a businessman, as an entrepreneur, something creative?
Yeah,
obviously you mentioned money, but
yeah, I think I was surrounded by my family, had their own businesses. I used to sell, my stepdad was a car dealer, so what I used to do, I used to get the car key rings from those cars, so like Bentleys, Audis, whatever, used to sell the car key rings on eBay and used to post them for free at my dad's office. So basically I was making money selling car key rings from about 10 years old. I was talking to my stepdad the other night, actually. I used to print out 50 adverts a day from Auto Trader of cars he should buy. This was when I was 11 years old.
Yeah.
And you know, when you're a kid, you don't realise how annoying you are. But now when I go out and people try and talk to me about boxing, I'm like, please don't talk to me about my job, you know, on the one day. But I used to do that to my stepdad every night. He used to be like, yeah, not right now. I've been buying cars and selling cars all day. But now, you know, you realise over time. But I think it was always in me to go and do something, you know, whether it was sport or it was something else, I would have had the same mindset. And I just love working. And you know,
it's a hyper focus you're describing. I think when you're, I don't think I'd never describe you as ADHD because you're too mellow in lots of ways. I've been around you a lot, but you do have a hyper focus. But you seem to love boxing and that milieu now, though.
Yeah, I think more than anything, being honest, I love putting on events. I love putting on shows. You know, there's a limit to, when it comes to boxing, there's a limit to how much we can do. When they get in the ring, it's completely out of our control. We can put on the best shows, the best fight cards, but sometimes they don't always live up to it. Sometimes they go far and beyond what your expectations are. For me, it's about putting on great events. And I think that's come from the business we're in of not just boxing but darts, snooker. You know, we're an events business when we love putting on entertainment for people. And you know, the biggest thing for me is walking out every weekend, and we get this nearly every weekend with 40 shows a year, that I can walk out, look round and go, yeah, we did this.
Yeah. Or
I can walk out and go, this isn't good enough. And that's what keeps us motivated and driven.
Do you do that very often? This isn't good enough?
I'm probably the biggest critic. I mean, I drive everyone nuts in our office because I'm quite small detail.
Just trying to sell them Jaguar keyring.
Yeah. I've sold out now. I've got none left. But I drive them nuts in the office because I'm like the tiny details man.
Perfectionist.
Yeah, and
brilliant.
It must drive them mad.
Yeah,
but every day is like, that's not good. But it's not always big, but we're very good at big picture stuff. It's like, that's not good enough, that needs to improve. And maybe no one will ever notice, but for me, if you get those bits right and you have that level of care, you're gonna see an improvement across the board.
You're 31. I think you were 31 yesterday, so like you say, you've been around forever seemingly in the sport. We're going to go to questions and from a lot of the viewers and listeners in the next section, but I want to ask you about your relationship with Eddie Hearn now, because he seems to give you canonical ownership of being you. I never see you concerned. It's like you didn't go through the PR team to come here today. You're very much your own man, and he gives you a long leash in that way, even if he needs to give you a leash, if that's the right expression. But having that trust of Eddie is a massive thing, I think, because you can fill the breach when he's not around. I mean, Eddie's Eddie, isn't he? You know,
you can't compare to him.
He's an amazing promoter. You are working with one of the great promotional teams. I mean, obviously, I know his dad, and I've known his dad for 25, 30 odd years. And, you know, Barry is a master of those things, and you will have learnt a lot with Barry, I'm sure. But do you realise that Eddie gives you that long leash, if you like? He gives you canonical ownership within the company to be yourself.
Yeah, I think, you know, the big thing we get compared, or I get compared to him. So people look at my interviews and go, he's just a shit Eddie Hearn. And I don't want to be Eddie. But I'm very different to
even
him.
though you're wearing the same glasses these days.
I bought them first, though.
Okay.
I got them first.
Okay, because I've noticed that recently in a lot of interviews, the Detroit trip and everything, with Ed Sheeran. I'm not sure I've seen that picture, but you both wear, I mean, are they actually glasses?
They are real
fashion?
Glasses, I can't see.
Because you're Essex boys, remember, so you're into your fashion. I mean, you're a handsome,
you've become a lot better
man.
Looking since I've had these on.
Okay, but that's good. That's good to know.
No, I get compared to him a lot, though, and it's very much, we're different people. I love an Excel spreadsheet. I love a contract. I love finances. I love making things happen. He is very much shout 800 ideas and like comes up with the idea, and he's like, go away and make them happen. And that's been a consistent over the last, you know, look, I've grown up with him, and I think we've spent more time together in the last 16, 17 years than with anyone else. We drive each other mental at times, because you spend a lot of time together, but he's given me the opportunity to go out and, like you say, take complete control of what,
grow.
Yeah.
And grow. You've grown, haven't you?
Yeah, completely. And But I think he knows what I'm good at, and I know what he's good at. That's why people have said to me in the past, why don't you do it on your own? But you can't beat him at what he does.
No.
And without him, he's obviously built an amazing brand. Don't get me wrong. I think I could go and run a huge promotional company, but you can't beat him. He's unbeatable.
Unity is strength, isn't it? And it really is.
Yeah.
When you work together with people, and it's one of the things you'll notice as you get older, is that you desire working with people you get on with. It's no fun not working. There's a shit in every team. There always is, wherever you go in life. But as you get older, you'll enjoy that more, that the team works. And it clearly does work.
Yep.
Let me jump onto a few things. 40 events a year. As you say, you're all over the place. You spend so much time with Eddie. In the time that you've been in boxing, has it changed you? Has it changed? And what are the difficult aspects of it? The hardest aspects of boxing for you? There's 3 questions there, really.
I don't think it's changed me. I think it's given me... I think I could go and work in almost anything now. Because
I think you could.
There's no business quite like it.
Yeah.
Where every night and every morning you wake up and you're like, oh my goodness, what today? And whether it's not just fighters, it's everything around the sport. I think it's set me up though, like I say, to be able to go into almost anything, which is great. I've changed as a person. I have the least ego, which is quite good in this business. I honestly couldn't care.
It's a very interesting point.
I'm quite happy just to be...
Yeah, you have to have one a little bit, don't you, to be involved in it? Or can you let Eddie do that?
I think you can let other people, but also there's so many people you don't get on with in this business, but at some point you're always going to need them, is the reality. And it's quite good to be... And this is what Eddie and Barry have always been great at, is, you don't have to get on with someone to do a good deal or to make something happen. And that's a lot of the time in boxing. You can't... I like to get on with people. I'm not a bad person. I like to...
You're not attritional?
No, but I just...
Can you be attritional?
I don't know. I just want to be successful and do good things. Do great things where people go, that was brilliant. And if you have to go through some pain to get to that point and, some annoyance and work with people you don't really want to work with, so be it. And I think you'd have to do that in any business. So, in terms of myself, I think it's been great sort of grounding for me, and you work with so many different personalities and a lot of egos that you just have to park and go, okay, just let them be the way they are.
It has to be about the fighters as well though, doesn't it? That's what I always go back to. However big my ego wants to be, however much you need it as well at times, and the world is very critical now of everything, isn't it? Good, bad or indifferent. It's about the fighters ultimately.
Yeah, 100%, and making sure they get paid.
Without them, what can you do?
For sure.
What's the toughest thing then that you've encountered so far?
Probably my age was tough at one point. Not so much now because of the position I've sort of worked into.
CEO at 26, weren't you?
Yeah, but even...
a big company.
Yeah, but even at 24, 25, I was making decisions and people used to look at me and go, does he need to go and speak to someone about that? And I think that was... I grew up early though, because I worked from 16, and I never really had that stage of being a kid going out and about and having a laugh. Like, I had a laugh in my own way doing what we did, and I'm very lucky to do what we do. We travel the world, we have great fun, but I missed out on all those stages that people probably have in uni, etc. So, but I think at 24, 25, I was a real grown up. Like, people think I'm probably 40 years old if they meet me now, because I'm very mature. I can have a laugh. Like, people don't see, I can be a nutter on the other side and have a laugh, but I'm very sort of structured, and everything about me is very methodical and planned. So I think that was probably the toughest thing, was always just the age, but that's sort of moving away now.
2 more questions really, and they're really good ones, I think, before we get into the kind of boxing nitty-gritty. Biggest pinch me moment so far, and the biggest I slept on the floor that night moment, because you slummed it, because I know you probably don't slum it, but we all do at times, whether that's sleeping on an aeroplane, on a private jet and waking up with a headache or whatever it is. And also, how competitive are you and Eddie? So those 2 questions. First one, the biggest slumming it moment so far in your career?
Actual slumming it or fake slumming it?
Well, would you answer however you want? It's an open question.
I think the early days were the tough days where it
Sleeping on hard matters on the floor.
Yeah, or like just
staying in the office overnight.
Yeah, working 18 hours at a poker tournament or 26 hours. I'm not sure if we were even allowed to do it, but we didn't do it. It was just fun. It wasn't a job.
Is that still Matchroom or before Matchroom?
No, this was Matchroom. All I've ever known was Matchroom, really, from a working life. But those were the real tough days. Now, it's funny because the people who work for us now, the younger people who come in to work for us now, don't really realise like how good it is.
Oh, yeah.
Because back in the day, it was like Goresbrook Leisure Centre or some leisure centre.
I've done events there with Matchroom, yeah.
And it was
Grundy Park Leisure Centre.
Yeah, and
Brentwood Leisure Centre.
Yeah, Brentwood's not too bad, you know.
Easy now. Well, obviously we got the Towie Massive, haven't we?
Exactly.
Because, but I remember doing a Tyson Fury, John.
Yeah, Brentwood. Yeah,
I can't remember his surname now. Big John.
Yeah.
Both travellers. Massive night. One of the Fury brothers threw a bottle across. It was a Frank Maloney card that night, I think.
Yeah.
It was a good night.
But those events where it was like, all like Cudmore Lakes for the Fishermania, for example, like all these things where it's like no one really realises actually now we're in like 1 week, you know, we're in Mexico City, 1 week we're in New York, 1 week we're in New Orleans, like, and don't get me wrong, it's still hard work, but it's just in nicer places, and a lot more fun. But you know, slumming it was really the early days where it was like it was constant sort of. We still work hard now, or even harder now than ever, but a different way. You know, it was literally back to back to back. I think pinch me moments. I was talking about this the other day. I've actually started a journal, like an app on my phone.
Good.
Because every day there's so many, not every day, but most days there's so many moments where I look at it and go, can you believe we've done, you know, what we've done here? I think one of the big moments for me was when we did Joshua Klitschko at Wembley, because I was 25 years old.
2017, April.
Yeah. And I organised basically all of that. Or not all of that. There's a big team.
It was only the second big Wembley Stadium fight. That's the point as well. You've done Froch and Groves, which was an enormous success. Yeah. We know 80,000. Carl will never let us forget. But it was an amazing event. We couldn't believe how big it was. Yeah. So you took the reins for that then,
for
did
the Joshua one, yeah. And then even Joshua Ruiz in Saudi as well. Or, you know, when we did our first US show, I remember when we signed Danny Jacobs.
Yeah.
And that was a moment where we signed Danny Jacobs, and in the car in LA, Eddie turned around to me and he went, "Good luck." And I was thinking, I haven't got a clue what I'm doing.
At the time, though, Frank, it was an 8-year. I remember writing about it. I was there at the launch of DAZN with Bellator. At the time, I was doing some TV work for Bellator and also Matchroom at the same time. It was a great New York press conference, if you recall. And I was staggered. I think £127 million deal for Bellator over 7 events, I think it was. Or it was a big series, a tournament series. And it was $1 billion for 8 years. I don't know if that was an official figure, but it was $1 billion over 8 years. And there's never been a deal like that in the history of boxing, in my view.
No.
There may be now with the Saudis at some point.
Yeah, but sport is just growing and growing, isn't it?
But that was enormous, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a huge moment, and especially for a business that, you know, we come from, we're from Essex, we come out, and even when we look at, you know, another one was when we did Canelo Billy Joe Saunders at the AT&T Stadium. We broke the outdoor record for boxing that night. Again, we're just like, we've come from Essex and come over here and breaking records with the biggest shows, and all of these. I think it's tough to pinpoint because there's so many moments where you go, look at what we did there, look at what we did there.
But even a couple of days ago, we can see this on the screen now. You, Eddie, and Ed Sheeran. And when you meet people, are there pinch me moments? Have you met people and thought, wow, this is all right? And they know who I am and I didn't know who they were. Oh my God, it's the lead singer from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You probably know who that is, but it's those moments. Have you got one of those or a couple of those?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, Ed Sheeran was like one of the nicest guys you could ever meet. Yeah. Spent a load of time with him.
In Detroit.
Yeah, big boxing fan. And it was actually out of the blue. This is one of these moments where Eddie and I, we went out in the morning. I think it was on the Friday, the day of the weigh-in. We went out. He said, you know, Ed Sheeran's performing. And Ed Sheeran's a massive boxing, and like family are big boxing fans. I was like, oh, right, let's go. So I spoke to a friend, Kevin, who's been with him for like 10 years. He sorted it all out, but that was great. I mean, I remember...
Big Kev, the security guy.
Kev, he's a great guy. Yeah. And, you know, we're trying to get him along to one of the shows this year. But that was an amazing moment, just sitting with him, you know, because I said to Eddie in the car, it's a bit like your dad going to meet the Beatles years ago. You know, like in terms of comparison,
absolutely.
in terms of size.
It is.
But you meet these people, and actually, I find the biggest people are the nicest ones you could meet as well. You know, it's so easy to be famous these days, but actually someone like him, and I said it to his dad as well, like what he represents and who he is quite amazing, because so many people look up to the wrong types of people these days. He's a superstar.
Have you seen the doc about his life?
No, I haven't.
Where he's living with his wife and his kids come along, and you know, she's so supportive. She was an international sportswoman, wasn't she? And no, it's phenomenal. I didn't know a lot about Ed Sheeran until I watched that, and he's such an artist. He's a sensitive artist, which a lot of fighters are as well at the very top. They're very, very sensitive and emotional about a lot of things.
Boxers, but then it's a special. You have to be a certain way to be in this business as well, don't you? To get in there and do what they do. You know,
you find out if you belong, don't you? As well. I mean, there are rough rides, but I don't know. I think if you've got a passion and a love for it, you're going to stay with it. You clearly have. What about your passion and love for your competitiveness with Eddie?
I don't think there's no competitiveness between us.
I beat him in a 5K last week. Look at this Instagram picture.
Well, I mean,
here I am pulling my socks up. Look how good I look.
Yeah.
I beat Eddie in another 5K. Well, that was in Detroit.
Well, that's just to wind him up more than anything.
Well, that is being competitive.
No. Do you know? I again, like the ego thing. I have no competition. Like, my thing is, as long as I know I did everything I could in that situation, I'm more than happy. And because so many people are brought up on this, you must come first, you must come first, you must come first. Mine is, I'm going to put everything into it, and you're never going to be better than you're never going to do better than me, because I care about it too much not to give it my all, if you know what I mean. And I think that's, Eddie and I are very different, like I said earlier, different characters. He's a competitive, like he doesn't want to get beat by anyone, which is great. And at the same time, I've got the same thing but in a different way. It's mine's sort of a judging of myself. It's not what anyone else thinks. It's, did I give everything to this, you know, whether it's an event or working with a fighter. And as long as I did, that's all I need to be happy and content with it.
Do you have to work hard on the outfits to keep up with Eddie though?
Yeah, I mean, I've got to be honest, I've passed that on to my missus. I do not buy a single item of clothing. She buys.
That's very old-fashioned.
I know, but
I mean, you always look fantastic.
Thank you.
Zara. You always make an effort.
Zara head to toe. I go back. I get back from places and there's 3 boxes of Zara, and it's like, right, try that on. That's going back. You can wear that. You can wear that. So
I thought you looked good in khaki the other day.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, I thought you did look good in khaki.
Maybe I think I might have picked that one myself out of the wardrobe. But she dresses me for literally, or buys my clothes for every day of the week. It's perfect.
Wow. More from Frank after this. We're going to talk boxing in detail now. You're listening or watching Fight Club Episode 7. I'm Gareth A via Boxing Social. In the studio with me today is the one and only CEO of Matchroom. There's only one CEO of Matchroom right now, but he is the one and only Frank Smith. Welcome back, Frank.
Thank you, mate. Good to be here.
Yeah, questions now. We're going to hear from Impressionist Tony Lapidus shortly. I think he might even be doing Eddie, plus all the other people he does in boxing. But let's do a couple of questions. First of all, Luke Brown is asking, and I think this is in the wake of George Kambosos getting the decision over Maxi Hughes at the weekend. You may have seen it or may not. I've only seen snippets so far. I didn't see the whole thing. What can, and people are saying that Maxi got robbed, notably people like Tim Bradley. What can be done to ensure that judges stop gifting fights to home fighters? I don't think they're gifted, but sometimes there seems to be a skew for home fighters. Canelo against Golovkin, the first fight, was an odd result. I know you've promoted Canelo in 6 of his last 8, I think it is, but is there anything that can be done in your view?
I think, look, I didn't see the fight you mentioned. I saw, like I saw, like you said,
you will watch it though,
saw
won't
some
you?
snippets, yeah. But I think the key for me is we have to look at getting rid of incompetent judges. There are some incompetent judges. Sometimes it is someone scores it a different way to others. I'm not very good at scoring fights. Like I don't sit and watch fights and score them myself because it's not what I do.
But on the eye test, you can have one guy winning, but when you score it, it's the other guy winning, and that does happen with boxing, and it's one of the anomalies of the scoring system. Without, I hasten to add, allowing incompetence.
Yeah, but I think there needs to be, from the governing and sanctioning bodies, more of a push when there are these bad decisions, and sometimes there are quite glaringly obvious ones, to say to a judge, right, you're not judging for 6 months, or you have to explain. And sometimes they do it, but I don't think they follow through enough with it, to be honest. And I think there can be a better job done of actually sort of ridding the sport of people who just aren't competent.
We've got a lot of questions about very kind of big issues in boxing at the moment. We've got a question being asked, is the Conor Benn resolution about to be made soon?
Yeah, very, very close. I mean, it's something that's outside of our hands. You know, we haven't been directly involved with it. Obviously, Conor had his case and hearing, and we're expecting news very soon. You know, we, as much as anyone, want sort of an end to this and understand what the next steps are.
And if he does get a suspension or a ban and there's time for him to fight Chris Eubank Jr., regardless of what happens with Chris Eubank Jr. and Liam Smith, that's now official, obviously, September the 2nd in Manchester, do you think that fight will still happen? Is it still a big fight, or does it depend on the outcome of Eubank's next fight?
I do think it will naturally always be a big fight because of the names, you know, and there is a real dislike between the two of them now. But at the same time, I think both those guys, you know, Liam Smith said it the other day, and I don't know about Chris, but I think whoever lost that fight would probably be in a position of thinking, do I still want to carry on?
Yeah.
Regardless of what the other fight is. I don't know, you know, you have to, it's only 5 weeks away now, that fight as well.
But in my kind of experience, when fighters decide whether they're going to carry on or not, it's never because if there's a big pot of money at the end of it, they will carry on. If they've got to climb 4 or 5 fights to get back into world title contention,
true.
Because it is a business as much as it is a sport, if not more of a business than it is a sport, which we'll come to in a minute. But I think that fight's always going to be there, in my view. You know, and obviously you have a weird association with that fight as well, because I think your wife is Emily Eubank.
Yeah, not married just yet.
Oh, you're not married
basically
yet, no.
Feels like married. We've been together nearly 8 years, so she's that was an interesting one when we made the first time round. You know, look, I spent so much time on that fight with Callis Howland, and I do want it to happen because I believe it's a huge event. It's a massive event for boxing, you know, especially British boxing, and I very much want to. It comes back to the point of when they get in the ring, there's nothing I can do. So if we can just deliver a massive opportunity, they both get in there. Good luck to them.
Another massive event will be when you marry Emily Eubank.
Pay-per-view, I think.
Definitely pay-per-view, like you and Eddie in a ring as well, or you and Simon Jordan in a ring. I'll get these two questions out in a minute. It'll be a massive event, obviously, when you do marry. I've met Emily several times. I mean, I really like the Eubank family. I've covered the dad as well, obviously, in his career at times, and I've really enjoyed Chris Eubank Jr.'s career. I really find him fascinating as a subject to write about, and I still think he's unfulfilled. But one of the questions I got this week was, what's it like, because I thought you were married, what's it like having, or this person did, what's it like having Chris Eubank Sr. as your father-in-law?
Yeah, he's. It's always different when you meet someone years before in a work mode, and then the family side. He's got some great stories. He's great to be around, and I think he, after a while, maybe it took a bit of time, but I think he learned to. That was part of the family. After a while, it wasn't always easy, but he's always been very pleasant with me.
Was there not that moment where he took you aside at a garden party drink?
I'm sure there has been a few.
It's my son. Well, we might get Tony Lapidus on that one in a minute.
There has been a few, to be honest.
Yeah, and I can imagine there would be, because he's he is a gentleman. He's an honourable kind of person, and I think, people care about his vulnerabilities today. He always seemed impermeable, so hard, so durable, and yet there are vulnerabilities about Chris Senior, which are quite endearing. I think he's becoming a very wise man as well. Maybe he always was, but there's a lot of wisdom in him as well.
Yeah. Look, he loves, I've spent many hours with him sort of talking to me, and boxing's always been a tough subject between the two of us, so we try and steer clear away from that as much as possible because we have very different views on things. And but yeah, he's a very interesting man, got some amazing stories as well.
I've really, and this is a serious point, I'm not going to get you to comment on it particularly, but he's also experienced tragedy as a father, and as a father myself and a grandfather, you look at those moments, like the passing of Seb, Eubank, you just think, wow, he'd go through it. And when people say that Chris Senior is saying things about his son, about weight cuts and things like that, and how he feels about people using his son, I think it's genuine. I think it is the noise of a father deeply emotional about life, about the life of his son. I think it's genuine. I really do.
I think it's hard as well, living a life through the public eye as well, especially when around a family who have been in it for their whole lives, basically. So, it's never an easy one.
On a couple of lighter notes, would you and Eddie ever have a celebrity boxing match?
No, I think he would absolutely pulverise
me. Do you?
Yeah. I mean, we've had a few spars and they haven't ended.
He's a big lad, isn't he?
He's big. He's not. We're very similar in weight, but he's got about a foot on me, and his arms are about 2 foot longer as well.
Well, the Barry Hearn story when he took him in a gym in Romford at the snooker club.
I'm glad he didn't do that to me. Yeah.
What was Eddie, 15 at the time? Is it Sarah, their mum? No. Susan was absolutely apoplectic about him doing it. But of course, Barry got caned and dropped like a sack of potatoes with a body shot.
Good way to learn.
Good way to learn. But about your son, you mean?
Yeah. No, you found out early.
Yeah, no.
Eddie Hills.
Exactly. But in recent times, you were called the monkey, not the organ grinder, by Simon Jordan, and you actually called him out for a Misfits fight, didn't you?
Yeah, that was the Misfits fight. Was a bit of banter, but because he's old, I wouldn't want to. I'm a fit, healthy 31-year-old. I think he's in his mid 50s. It wouldn't be fair, but. It's all a bit of fun with Simon. He talks like he's an expert about every single subject matter on earth, with about an ounce of actual real understanding of it. So look, he's very good at what he does. I wouldn't be running out of my way to go on his show, because that's what he specialises in, is basically trying to embarrass people on the radio. But I would say he doesn't really have a strong enough understanding to talk the way he does about the sport.
He's got some very good views on it, but the problem is, I always bring this back to Simon. I've labelled him the Caped Crusader before on air, and I work with him and them on TalkSport, of course. The problem is, it's very hard to fix boxing. We don't have a world governing body. It is the Wild West. As you say, every event starts with an empty venue that you book, and you put things together, and it's all business deals, and it is a Machiavellian society with market forces. That's why the heavyweights demand so much money. That's why fights take so long to happen between people like Spence and Crawford, Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, who obviously fight this week. Final one before we go to break. Anthony Joshua and Dillian White, fight you're really looking forward to? Did AJ do the right thing? Were you all surprised when he demanded that he'd have that fight rather than, knock over someone else? I'm not going to mention any names, but knock over someone else and go on to, if you can confirm it, a massive multi-million-dollar fight with Deontay Wilder?
Yeah, 100%. Look, there was a number of options for him, but he was quite insistent throughout that he wanted the Dillian White fight. He wants a fight he can get up for. And I think it's the biggest fight out there that can be made outside of the Deontay Wilder, the Furies, and Usyk. It's the biggest fight there is in heavyweight boxing.
Agreed. Ngannou?
Yeah, I mean, maybe next time. Ngannou.
Yeah.
Ngannou, Fury.
Ngannou Joshua.
Oh, Ngannou Joshua. Yeah, but I think Eddie raised it with him once, but he wasn't interested. He wants to keep building in boxing and create a legacy for himself. AJ's done amazing things for the sport of boxing, in my opinion. He's done amazing things for boxers as well, because he really brought boxing back to the limelight. I think, you only have to look at him selling out venues, breaking pay-per-view records. He's never really going to get people saying, he's done amazing things. That's the reality, and I think he's come to understand that. But he sort of is his own biggest critic and wants to keep learning. He's shown that by moving to the US to train with Derek James. You know, he could quite easily, with what he's done, just go, right, thanks very much, I'm just going to coast. You know, but he wants to keep challenging himself. And the Dillian Whyte fight, you know, we saw with the ticket sales sold out in just a matter of hours of being.
Should have done a bigger venue.
I think it was 5 weeks to go. You know, we had 5 weeks. People had booked their holidays. I think it was the right decision to go to the O2.
I think you'd have got 40,000 if you'd wanted it.
Yeah, but I think taking it back to the O2 where the first one was, you know, I think it's gonna be every night we do at the O2, a packed out show at the O2 is something special.
I agree.
I think it's going to be a great atmosphere in there. Yeah, I think he wanted that fight. He wants to test himself consistently. You know, he's not the kind of person who's just like, he's not doing it for the fact of just get another win. And yeah, look, the Deontay Wilder fight is what we've all got our eyes set on, but he can't look past August 12th because Dillian Whyte's coming and he's going to bring a real challenge. It's not a knockover job. It's not a walkover. You're fighting in, you know, against one of the, I guess, top 5, top 6 current day heavyweights.
Yeah.
So yeah, some exciting nights in the heavyweight division to come.
Absolutely. Well, Frank Smith is staying with me. Up next, Impressionist Tony Lapidus joins us. Welcome back to Fight Club here on Boxing Social with me, Gareth A. Davies. Frank Smith here in the studio with me on this episode. Well, joining us via Zoom is the Impressionist. Well, he's many people actually. He's multi-phrenic, if I can call it that. Is the Impressionist Tony Lapidus. Tony, you're working on TV, you do a lot of actors, you do a lot of sports people. We're only going to actually see you for a moment before you transform into several other people. Why boxers and why boxing?
Something. First of all, thanks for having me on.
Pleasure.
Something about boxers, I don't know, they intrigue me in particular, particularly when I see them in press conferences and all the interviews and all the social media interviews that they do. And I've always kind of liked it growing up as a sport. I'm a bit more of a casual fan than I let on, but I've always just taken a liking to it, to be fair.
Well, I think you're very good at it, and your resonance is growing all the time. I think there's a lot of unique characters in boxing. Let's get to it. Let's do a few Matchroom fighters first of all. AJ, what do you mean when you said recently that too much pressure has been put on you?
Yeah. Do you know what the thing is? Yeah, I feel like in boxing, a lot of people like to cheer and be a fan when you're doing well and when you're on the up and coming. But when you're a little bit low or feeling down, that's when people start to put on the pressure. You feel where I'm coming from? So take, for example, say what happened with Fury and that boxer. What was that boxer's name? The Swedish guy that he fought? Oh, Wallin.
Yeah.
That was his name, yeah. Yeah. So Fury went 12 rounds, got cut, and the fight almost got stopped. And nobody applied the pressure. But when AJ goes 12 rounds with Jermaine Franklin, suddenly, the guys stop putting on the pressure and they get caught up with the he said, she said. So can you give me an answer to that? Like, why do you think that is?
Well, I don't know. I'd like to know what someone like, I don't know, Ricky Hatton's answer is to that.
Well, listen, I think, a lot of people, when they're down and they're out, people start getting on top of them. They do start piling on the pressure. But at the same time, I feel we can be very, very, very proud of everything what AJ's achieved. He's put British boxing certainly so we're on the map a lot more, than it used to be. So we can be very, very, very proud of him.
And what would Mike Tyson say at the moment about the likes of Tyson Fury fighting Francis Ngannou?
Hey, I think that's anybody that said that's not good for the sports, that's negative. People that say that's not bringing eyes and that's just inspiring different fighters to get involved in the sport of boxing. It's inspiring people that are 6, 7 years old. I think it's a great thing. It makes me emotional.
Yeah. Well. Look, I'm going to ask Eddie Hearn a question. All right.
Is he there with you now?
Apparently, he's there with you. I saw an interview with Ariel Helwani, and you said you've been mean at times. What do you think of that, Eddie?
Gareth, look, I like you, right? And I know we've got some different opinions, right? And that's okay. But you have gone a little bit rogue recently, right? I saw you on the Elwani show, which, by the way, I did. I was there and I did incredible numbers, right? But you called me a silky smooth bullshitter, and I thought that was harsh, right? TalkSport, another one. The criticism that I've got has been absolutely relentless. And I don't mean relentless like in the good way, like my book, which sells for just $9.99 in all good bookstores. I mean relentless harsh, right? That said, I do like you. You dress fantastic. I might send Parsons your way because you can give him some fashion advice, right? He dresses absolutely awful.
Parsons? What would Parsons be like on the Helwani show with those two together then?
Well, first of all, we've just got to start by saying that this is Charlie Parsons here with Boxing Social, with the one and only Garethinho Davies. Garethinho, how are we for a start? Doing all right? So, Gareth, just before, I just want to just ask you, I'm just wondering, do you ever feel like Eddie Hearn is a little bit mean to you in interviews, or is it just me on social media that gets the flack and abuse from him?
I don't think I'm going to ask you to do me in response to that. I'll just do me myself, because I've seen that wig and those glasses. Are you about to put them on, are you? Oh dear, you better head.
I'm going to put them on.
Go on then.
It's not the same without it. You can't.
I want to know if you're going to get the yip. Oh dear me, I don't know if you're going to get the yips now doing
There's
it
not
with
enough
me.
greys in that wig.
There's not enough grey in the wig, yeah, for a start.
It's not well. Look, I can add some in. That's possible as well. I just haven't got round to doing that. What would you like to ask? You're the interviewer, so.
Well, I'd like you to ask. I would like Gareth A. Davis as you to ask Frank Smith a couple of questions.
Okay, well, I was going to do this also with Gareth, but I'll ask you as well. Fury versus Joshua, will it happen eventually? What do you think?
I hope so, Gareth. I hope so, honestly, and I can't wait to see you there looking like that.
Oh yeah, but I won't. There will be no grey in it, I assure you. What about Eubank versus Benn? Will we see that fight?
I also hope so. There's a lot of hope so's in this, to be honest, Gareth. But I just want to spend more time with you.
Oh yeah, I will be. We will be doing loads of interviews. It will be great. It will be fascinating. Definitely.
Perfect. The numbers are going to be through the roof.
Through the roof. And by the way, Gareth, you know I've got some more questions for you, but we can do that later if you prefer.
Yeah, no, but it's too weird for you asking me questions about me, and that's just too. But so take that bloody wig off and those glasses off, and let. Very good, very good indeed. Yeah, because it's a very weird thing to see someone impersonating you live. We haven't done Tommy and Tyson Fury. Now, obviously, we know that Tommy Fury's just, I think, got engaged to Molly May, and I just wonder what Big Tice might think about it and what his response is to those who might be criticising him about fighting Francis Ngannou.
Are you asking for Tyson's response, or are you asking for Tommy's?
That's clearly Tyson.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. First of all, am I allowed to swear on this show?
You can swear what you fucking like.
Right. Anybody what says that can take a fucking run and jump. Any shithouse dosser, they're just jealous, Gareth. It's going to be a great fight. And as Frank says, it's a game changer and everybody knows it. But I've blocked all the shithouse slinks out of social media, Eddie Hearn. He can get lost. He can take another fucking run and jump as well. And I don't give a shit what anybody says, to be honest with you. Don't give a shit.
What about your brother getting married? What do I think? Listen, Frank and I are going to go into that in the next section, but every boxer I've spoken to would said if they could take this fight, they'd take that opportunity. It's not ideal for the fans. The fans want to see the WBC belt defended. But really, we want to see you in the ring. Well, I do, with Tyson, with Alexander Usyk and with Anthony Joshua before your career ends. Simple as that.
Wait till after the fight and see whether you're saying the same thing. Because it's going to be a rumble in the jumble, I can tell you that.
A rumble in the jumble? How do you... Finally, I've got a couple of other people. Finally, let me ask you on Tyson Fury. How do you feel about your brother Tommy getting married or engaged to Molly May?
I'm extremely proud of them. Let me tell you something. The moment what I saw her, I thought, that's a match made in heaven. That's an absolute match made in heaven. They call it Love Island, but and I know that a lot of people make fun of it, but it's called that for a reason, isn't it? And as far as my brother feels...
Well, listen, you know, I feel extremely happy. You know, I've had the kid. I've had the kid already. I was right there to cut the placenta. I don't know if you've seen the Netflix documentary. If you've seen that documentary trailer, but yeah, I was there. I was there to cut the placenta, and I've got a lot of things going at the moment. You know, I've got fights coming up, which will be announced shortly. And but I don't care about anything. You know,
are you fighting KSI? Are you going to fight KSI? We're here at 70.
I'll fight anybody. I'll fight anybody. I'm from a fighting dynasty. You know, the Furies don't get scared of no one. I'm not scared of no man, and I will fight anybody. You'll just put them in front of me. You saw what I did to Jake Paul, and I'll do it again if I need to.
Did you get dropped by Jake Paul?
No, I didn't. I slipped. There were absolutely not. I'll tell you what, he's got a big mouth, and I'll be fucking shutting it for him if he starts it again. But I don't mind. It's a nice thing to go in, do a few minutes and just get paid. You know, massive payday in Saudi Arabia or wherever else they want to do it. I'll do it again. But the main thing is I've got a family and I've got Molly, mate, and I've got a wedding on the go. All the fame, money and glory don't mean nothing.
As we've got Frank here, we might as well end with, well, we should end with a Matchroom fighter. If you can develop this, Katie Taylor, because we need a female boxer from you as well. Yeah. Could we have Katie Taylor chatting to Paulie Malignaggi or not? Can you do that?
Yeah, well, I can certainly try, you know. The thing is, I think that if Katie Taylor were to probably ask Paulie Malignaggi, like, he's very opinionated, you know, he's got some strong opinions on a lot of things. So if we asked him, what does he think of the whole crossover with, you know, Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou, we'd probably say something like, listen, man, honestly, I don't like it. I don't like that. People who say that these MMA fighters have got a chance against the boxer, they really don't understand boxing. You know, most of these guys, they've been doing it since they were about 6 years old. These MMA fighters, they don't have the same focus. So that's why if you would put like somebody like Conor McGregor in the ring with me, I'd knock him out within about 2 rounds. But it's the other way around as well. It doesn't work because how are you going to tell a boxer they can get into a cage with an MMA fighter? They've been practicing this. Honestly, man, this is ruining boxing. This whole crossover thing has got to stop.
Tony, it's been too short. Could have had you on for hours. You're absolutely brilliant. It's great of you to be on the show on this episode. It's fantastic to see you. Tony Lapidus, what a brilliant
Before I go, may I very briefly, can I shamelessly plug myself, Gareth?
Yes, you can. Shamelessly plug yourself right now.
Right, it's Tony Lapidus on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, all of me. I don't really use TikTok that much, but I'm still on it. Please feel free to follow. You know, every little helps.
Yeah, and you're also on ITV2 Deepfake Neighbour Wars playing Tyson Fury and Mark Zuckerberg, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I even shaved my head for it. Even shaved my head for that one.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Tony. We'll have you on again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, both of you. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Joining us now on Fight Club on Boxing Social with me and Frank Smith in the studio with me is the British mixed martial arts legend. It gives me great pleasure to say that Michael, I'm going to still call him the Count Bisping, joins us live on Fight Club. How are you, mate?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, I've been here back in England for about a week now. It's always great to be back. I have a lovely life in California, but, you know, home is the UK. We had the UFC London event last week, sticking around there now, doing some, do some press and whatnot around UFC Gym, which we're launching. But yeah, things are really good, Gareth. Good to see you.
And you've just got up, I take it, yeah?
No, you cheeky bugger. I was up at 7 o'clock. I did my 4 miles, been in the sauna, the steam room, you know. Maybe you'll come and join me one day, Gareth, and that waistcoat won't be quite so tight.
Listen, I've lost about 20 kilos since I saw you last.
I know, I'm kidding, mate. You look fantastic.
So do you, by the way. We're going to get into your questions for you, but your career, okay, wherever you go now in the UK, and I noticed it, I mean, I was working at TalkSport in the radio studio on Saturday night, hence I wasn't at UFC London, but wherever you go now, and you are a brilliant broadcaster now, I remember when I used to tell you, if I had your looks and you had my voice, we would be James Bond. But you could only be the villain with your looks and your voice. But you get so much love when you come back here for what you achieved and what you put on the line, because I know I covered almost all of it, didn't I? From the very beginning in about 2006, and I was with you on that journey. We fell out, we were friends. When you look back, it's all kind of quite funny, really. But
of course,
what a journey, Michael. What does it mean to you to genuinely be considered a legend now? And you are, of course, in the UFC Hall of Fame now as well.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get into it for any kind of accolades or anything like that, and to be considered a legend, which makes me feel very old. I did it, obviously, like a lot of people, just trying to earn a living for my family. And then it far exceeded anything I thought it would do. I'm very proud of what I achieved. It was a tough old road along the way, of course, like any fighter's life is. Won the belt, defended the belt, At one point, I had the most fights, the most wins in the UFC, I mean, I did some pretty amazing things that I'm proud of. And now, I'm still around the sport. I'm commentating the sport and things like that. So the sport of mixed martial arts and the UFC changed my life in so many ways, and I'm forever grateful.
One of the things we always used to do in the years that I was writing stories about you in the Telegraph, and I was very privileged to be riding in your shadow at the time as well, and doing my own thing and working with ESPN and working with people you work with now. I used to work with John Anik on MMA Live and all those things when we were really digging trenches for the sport, for its coverage. One of the things you always said to me was, I will never be happy, you haven't mentioned it, I will never be happy finishing if I haven't fought Anderson Silva. One of the very, very best from the Mount Rushmore of MMA. You fought him in London in the end, and you beat him.
Correct. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I still stand by that. I was asked the other day what my favorite fight was for my career. And obviously, the clear answer would be, well, when I won the belt, or when I brought the belt back to Manchester and defended on home soil. But the one that really stands out, the one that meant the most to me personally, was fighting and beating Anderson Silva. As you know, Gareth, Anderson, he was just an incredible champion, defended the belt more times than anyone else. The way he would beat people, the knockouts he delivered were just phenomenal and mind-blowing. And I always thought I could beat this guy, and everyone always thought I was crazy. And along the way, it's well documented now. Obviously, I had my eye troubles. I lost a vision in one eye. I was still continuing to fight and things. And I'd kind of resigned myself to the fact that I was never going to be champion of the world, but I was okay with that because I was still making a living and living my dream and competing all over the world in the sport that I loved. But then when I got the chance to fight Anderson Silva in London, for me, that was the biggest fight of my life. I looked at it as my world title fight. And it was a tough fight, a tough night at the office. I'd certainly left there with a few less brain cells, shall we say. But went my way, got the job done. Loved it.
Winners never quit, my friend. You know that.
Best-selling book. Yeah. Get it on bloody Amazon or your local bookstore today. I'm an author. I'm an author.
Yeah, you are an author. I could talk with you for hours because you and I have known each other for so long and done so many things. When you look back at that time, we used to do a lot of crazy shit as well, if you remember. But it's like the old school. They were the good old days. We did so many amazing things. I mean, I've followed you to Quebec City, to all over Vegas, UFC 200, all those events. When you look now and I say Anderson Silva has a loss to Jake Paul, when you look at the world now, the fight world, it's very, very different right now, isn't it, from what it was back then? And how do you feel about it changing with those kind of fights happening? Because in one's right mind, I couldn't believe it when I was first saying Jake Paul's fighting Anderson Silva. I know it's in a boxing match, and also I couldn't believe afterwards I said Jake Paul knocked Anderson Silva down, or Jake Paul's beaten Anderson Silva. How do you feel about that crossover that's going on? And as we're here talking boxing, Tyson Fury fighting a Francis Ngannou, for example.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot to respond to there. So, in terms of Anderson Silva and Jake Paul, real quick, this Jake Paul's MO, right? Anderson Silva's almost 50 years old. Sadly, everyone has their time in the sun. Nobody has a peak that stays permanent. You go up, you come down. Anderson Silva was down. I think he'd lost his last 7 or so, something like that. And he was almost 50 years old. So Jake Paul is doing the usual thing where he looks for people that are way smaller, way lighter, way older, that aren't boxers. The one time he did fight a boxer, he got beat. And look, he's not looking to rematch Tommy Fury. He's calling out. He's going to fight Nate Diaz now, who fought most of his career at 155 pounds. And he's almost 40 years old and has never had a professional boxing fight in his life. So there you go. Now, to answer your question about what do I think about the crossover and like YouTubers getting into boxing and all the rest of it, I've got nothing against Jake Paul. Even though he has come at me, I've got so many DMs of him abusing and talking shit and all the rest of it. And he actually offered a contract for me to fight. But he, not so much Jake Paul, but this whole celebrity movement around boxing and things, it kind of makes me cringe because, as you guys know, the fighting life chooses the person. You don't necessarily choose that. We're cut from a certain cloth, a certain background, and a lot of fighters, they do it because they are made for that. They're built for that, and that's all they've got. Now you're seeing, because the sport is so popular, boxing is popular, UFC has never been bigger. People look at it, they think it's cool. It's a way for fame. It's a way to get paid money and things like that. And they don't give it the proper respect that it deserves. Sadly, in the boxing world, people die every year. In the UFC, that's not the case, but injuries are a real thing. I'm sitting here with a broken back in 2 places with 1 eye. And I just don't want anyone to get hurt. It's a real danger. Combat sports are not something to be played at. You have to respect it, and these people get involved because they think it's a way to make a quick buck and they think it's all fun and games, Well, it's all fun and games until you lose an eye or you're in a coma, So, yeah, I feel it's doing a disservice and there's a lack of respect to what real fighters go through and why they choose to do it.
What's your feeling quickly on Fury fighting Ngannou? And did you ever get any offers like that which you might have taken out of financial desire?
Yeah. There was a little bit of a talk about a Tony Bellew back in the day, which would have been fun. I've got tremendous respect for Tony.
What would you have done to him in the ring, though? Because you can box.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know about that, mate.
Come on, what would you... Come on, this isn't... The count never backs down. Come on.
Tony, I'm not going to talk shit, you know what I mean? And it never materialised. But, hold on, Ngannou and Francis, and Tyson. I mean, look, listen, Tyson should be fighting Usyk. We all know this, and it's very frustrating if you're a boxing fan. But I've got no problem with people making money. And they're 2 guys, I mean, listen... Tyson's on top of the boxing world. Ngannou was a UFC champion, had an incredible story. So I've got nothing against that other than the fact that Fury should be fighting Usyk. Outside of that, look, listen, we all know Tyson's going to box his head off, right? If Ngannou tries to actually box him in a technical boxing fight, he's going to get picked apart. He's not fast enough. He's not skilled enough. He's never had a professional boxing fight. But he has ridiculous, insane power. So you never know. If I'm training Ngannou, I say in the first round, clinch up with the man because he's a UFC guy, so he'll have wrestling, force him into the corner and just swing and hope for the best. Because if he tries and places these shots, if he tries to pick the shot, he's not going to land anything. But if he just goes there in a blaze of glory and swings like a goddamn psycho, he might just catch him. And he does have the power to turn anybody's lights off. But let's be honest, 3 rounds, there'll be a little puncher's chance factor for 3 rounds.
Then he's going to gas, isn't he? Then he'll gas probably, yeah.
He'll gas, he'll get played with. Tyson will have a field day.
Heavyweight era in MMA. Did John Jones move up too late or just at the right time, maybe? I feel if he'd done it 4 years ago, there were, for me, with all the guys, I won't name them all now, there were 10, I've always said this, I wrote it in Fighters Only years ago, there were 10 $10 million pay-per-view events, million pay-per-view events that he could have fought, and he probably could have beaten all of them.
So yeah, the heavyweight division, I mean, there's a lot of great talent. Jones came up, became the champion, fought Cyril Gahn. on paper, a very, very good matchup for him because Cyril's incredible, but he's a kickboxer with not the best grappling. Jones took him down, tapped him out very quick. Now he's going to fight Stipe Miocic, who is the greatest heavyweight we've had because he's defended the belt more times than anyone else. So on paper, the greatest ever. Getting older, hasn't fought for a few years, so we'll see what version of Stipe shows up. And then I'm hearing that Jones is going to retire after that fight, which I understand because at light heavyweight, he went through multiple generations of champions and contenders. He's been there, done it, got the T-shirt. He's certainly got nothing to prove. He's come back up to heavyweight. He wins the belt. If he beats Stipe, it's a big if. If he beats Stipe, he's beaten the greatest ever. Then he needs to beat the number one because he's on about retiring. Right, he's got to fight Tom Aspinall. Tom Aspinall fought on Saturday night. Tom Aspinall is the future of the heavyweight division. He will be a champion. And if he retires without fighting Tom Aspinall, there'll always be an asterisk. There'll always be a question mark. And yeah, I think that's the fight that's going to happen. And just for the record, I think Tom makes short work of him.
Okay, wow, really? Okay, very interesting. For me, Jones is the GOAT, and he'll smoke all of them. He'll smoke all of them.
We'll see what happens.
But what I would say, in heavyweight MMA, you know this more than anyone. I mean, you were a middleweight, really a light heavyweight fighting at middleweight. You're a big man. Those 4-ounce gloves at heavyweight, it really is one punch to land in heavyweight MMA, and you can literally change a fight with a jab, can't you? From middleweight upwards. From middleweight upwards.
Former champion and long-time number one contender Robert Whittaker fought Dricus du Plessis a couple of weeks ago on International Fight Week, and the beginning of the end came when he dropped him with a jab. Followed it up. Was that. So yeah. I mean, listen, anything can happen in MMA, but Tom Aspinall is special, I'm telling you. He looked like Muhammad Ali on Saturday night dancing around. He's got tremendous striking. He was teaching jiu-jitsu to grown men when he was 16 years old. He's a fantastic wrestler. He's very disciplined. He's huge as well. He's a big old boy. So yeah, you can have your opinion, Gareth, of course, but you know.
I'm happy to be proved wrong. I'd love to have a British heavyweight champion in the UFC. I just find it very hard to pick against Jones because of what he's capable of, you know.
100%. But how boring is it if we all just go on about John Jones being great? We should say there's a real challenger. First of all, he's going to get through Stipe anyway. That's not a given. Stipe is going to be interesting because he can wrestle. He can probably stop a takedown. He stopped Daniel Cormier's takedowns, and Cormier is a fantastic wrestler. He's got knockout power. He's got real boxing. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
DAZN has the misfits. I know you don't want to be part of it, Frank, you and Eddie particularly. Dana has the slap league. What do you think of it? I find it really hard to watch because they're not defending themselves. I find it quite brutal, if I'm honest. A little bit like watching bare knuckle fighting. So hard to watch in some ways. What's your take on it?
Well, I actually commentate the slap event.
Oh, did you? Do you? Okay.
I do. No. Listen, I can tell you right now. Listen, of course, when you see it and you look at it, you think, wow, this is kind of shocking and crazy. But then when you speak to the people that do it, and by the way, Dana invented this. This is worldwide. Okay, it's a big thing. There's many leagues all over the world. So number one, people are choosing to do this anyway. So it's out there. It's a thing. Okay.
Yeah.
So whether or not Dana's doing it, people are still going to be doing this. Through Power Slap and Dana's event, of course, there's medical screening put in place. Okay, there's real money to be earned. Some of the guys are getting 60 grand a pop. When you speak to the guys and you hear about their background, a lot of them, you know, they were fighters, they had a go at that and they weren't able to make a living. Some of them are adrenaline junkies. They said, I remember one guy saying, I'm an adrenaline junkie. Do you understand? The adrenaline rush to stand here and just let someone smack me in the face as hard as they can, and then I do it back to them. They said it's wild. Another guy, for example, I think it's Cole Young, was telling me that his son has this condition called, I think it's CDG. Sadly, only going to live a couple of years. Right? He said, this allows me to not work and spend time at home with my son while he's still around. You know, and when you hear these stories, you know, and the human element, then who the hell are we to judge?
No, years ago, when going back in the day with MMA, we were telling that story. There was resonance and narrative and a narrative arc behind it. I get all that. I know, I get all that. But
it's a beautiful sport. I'm not comparing the two. You know?
No, but what I find fascinating about it is that it is very visceral to look from the outside, and the point you're making is, when you delve into something properly and you go narrow and deep into it, then you understand it more. And I imagine it's all about strength conditioning, neck conditioning, musculature up here, not taking much torque through your chin, but angling. I'm practicing on your chin in the screen right now, but angling your hand in the right way to hit the part of the chin, or there's parts you can hit. But what I was going to say was, I'll do. Because there's another fight sport out there that I'd happily do with you. It's called pillow fighting, yeah? Yeah. So I have that's the only thing I'd ever do with you, a pillow fight.
That would suit you in your pajamas.
There you go.
We'll find who you can go up against. You might win that. No, listen. The slaps, just real quick on this. It's a spectacle.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. But I'll tell you what. Listen, you go to an event, right? And listen, you can have all your bloody... I get it. I understand the criticisms. I know why they say that. Do you know? Yeah. It is what it is. But these are grown men, and they can do it anywhere. At least now they're going to get paid some good money, and it's kind of the razzmatazz is amped up and all the rest of it. But when you go to a live event, I am telling you right now.
No, I'm sure. Look, Frank, I've been to Matchroom darts before. Is it Ali Pally?
Yeah,
that
Ali
one.
Pally, yeah.
Mike. Frank's here. Matchroom darts. It's two blokes throwing darts at a dartboard. Frank, it's off the charts with 8,000 people in it. That's just darts. So it is a bit safer, but it's about understanding, creating the crowd, the atmosphere. We got another sporting event. That's it, really, isn't it?
Yeah, but in years to come, people will come round to it, and it's just because it's a shock factor now. Just like some people years ago would have watched MMA and gone, "That's brutal."
Yeah, they did.
They did. Yeah. They called it human cockfighting. Now
that's right. They called it human cockfighting.
Now it's one of the biggest franchises in the world in sport.
But the reality is, I don't think the narrative on the slap thing will change, because it is what it is, right? But I am a fan of human beings, of grown men being able to choose how they want to live their lives, and it's given they're allowed to compete in the safest manner. There's medical screening. They've got sponsors. They've got. Sponsors, and they're getting paid decently. That's what they want to do. And by the way, if they weren't doing it there, these guys have done it loads of times in other leagues, bush leagues, for next to no money. Now they're getting a chance. Dana never invented this. He's an entrepreneur.
He saw it
happening and thought, you know what? Let's give it a go.
Well, now I know that you're commentating. I will be watching it. Yeah, I will be watching it. Yeah.
It's mind-blowing. It's wild. When you see someone get stabbed and get knocked, because we all love a good knockout, let's be honest.
Michael, it would be remiss of me not to... You've stayed on in London. Obviously, say you're based in California with the family. Be remiss of me not to ask you about a couple of things. UFC gyms, that's growing. You're promoting UFC gyms here in the UK with Joe Long as well, who's a long-time promoter and kind of... exhibitor, in basically a promoter, all sorts with mixed martial arts and fight sports. Joe's been around in the sport long. Poke your head around the side, Joe. I know you're in the room.
Joe loves a bit of camera time.
There we go. Was he there? There he is, Joe Long. Legend. Yeah. There's a legend. Tell us about the UFC gyms.
Yeah, so obviously I live in California now, and UFC gyms have been there for a while. I walked into a UFC gym one day and I couldn't believe what I saw. The energy is just incredible. And when you hear UFC gym, you might think this is where fighters are going to train, but it's not that. They are state-of-the-art fitness facilities. Some of them are 50,000 square feet. They've got every piece of equipment you can imagine. You've got the spinning classes, you've got the yoga classes, you've got cardio kickboxing, you've got a cage, you've got Brazilian jiu-jitsu, you've got sauna, steam room, you've got all this. There's DJs on. The artwork all over the walls is all UFC branded. It's just a very, very cool vibe. There's a great community. And I remember going in and thinking, wow, this is incredible. It's like a gym I'd never seen. Yeah. So I actually invested one with Cub Swanson, another UFC fighter that I'm sure you know.
Yeah, I do.
We opened one together. We've got almost 3,000 members. Wow. And we were like, I was like, can I bring this to England? So myself and Joe, and a bunch of other people, we formed UFC Gym UK. We bought the rights. And now over the next 10 years, we are committed to opening 110 locations. A lot of them will be corporate owned, like the site that's open in Thurrock. That will be 50,000 square feet and have all the facilities that I just mentioned there. There will also be making them available to potential franchise partners as well. So if anyone's interested, go to ufcgym.co.uk.
Frank Smith is listening to this and he's thinking, oh yeah, we're going to open some Matchroom gyms. I can see him thinking about it right now.
No, we're late to the party. I've seen it now. We missed it.
Yeah. So no. So we're here. I mean, we've got two gyms open now. One in Nottingham, one in Woking. We've got one opening on City Road here in Shoreditch. We've got the site in Thurrock. We've got a few others coming up very, very soon. And as I say, we'll be opening up a lot of franchise locations as well. So it's honestly, if you want to go to the gym, you can do everything under one roof. Great vibe. It's great. I love it. And I'm happy to be involved because I played my role in developing the UK scene. So to help grow the sport even further here in the UK and bring UFC gyms over to the British Isles, man, I'm all for it.
Absolutely brilliant. And not only have you, as I say, open, we've been friends a very long time and it was an absolute delight to cover your career. And I think, there's no way that you'd have been on TV the whole time when I first knew you. You've become very erudite at it. You're slick. Your command of the language is amazing. And for a man that did tiling and worked in a slaughterhouse and slept in his car in the beginning outside the gyms, all these things, Michael, your narrative arc is extraordinary. You're actually acting in action movies now, and you've got a movie. Is it out or coming out as well? Will you tell us about that?
Yeah, sounds very la-di-da. I've got 3.
There you go. There you go.
So we did a remake of Red Sonja.
Are you the villain?
Well, not in Red Sonja. I'm actually one of the heroes. But, I'm saying too much. That's a Marvel property that'll be getting released, I don't know, maybe end of the year or next year. Just filmed Den of Thieves 2 with Gerard Butler. That'll be, I think they're still filming that. Did another one as well up in Toronto. What was that even called? Fight Another Day or something. So, yeah, look, listen, when I signed with the UFC, they used to subtitle me. You know what I mean? Because the Clitheroe accent.
In The Ultimate Fighter they did,
yeah. It's definitely evolved over the years, you know what I mean? And I've grown to be the man I was always destined to be. But now I commentate the UFC and I love that. I am so passionate about that. I get to fly around the world, be involved with the sport that I love, that did so much for me and my family and changed my life in so many ways. People always say, do you miss the fight game? I said, well, no, because I'm still a big fixture in it. I'm there, octagon side. I get to walk in and speak to the fighters afterwards. I get to be involved in a new generation of fighters as well. So I'm still heavily embedded in the world. So stepping in the cage and fighting, I don't need to do that. I still have my fixture within the sport.
Great to see you, Michael. Always great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us on Fight Club.
Pleasure, Gareth. Always good to talk to you, my friend. Frank, all the best. Have a good one.
Cheers, brother. Mate. Cheers. Welcome back to Fight Club with me, Gareth A. Davies, via Boxing Social. Still in the studio with me, Frank Smith. Frank, let me dive straight into some more questions for you. I haven't asked your view yet on Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou. As a promoter, do you get why they've done it? As a boxing fan, how do you see it? And do you have a strong view, like so many people do, about this fight happening?
100% I understand why they've done it. I understand why Tyson Fury, I understand why Ngannou have both done it. Look, we're in a dangerous sport and they deserve to make as much money as possible. And if someone offered me what they got offered to go and do that, you'd do it. And I think 99.9% of people would do it. I think the only questionable part of it is his WBC world title. And you can't say, like I saw Frank Warren's comments, you can't say we looked at all options. Well, you looked at 3 fights. So, you're the heavyweight champion of the world. That belt, in my opinion, should be defended separately. If that means people
shouldn't be 18 months.
Sitting idle.
Shouldn't be. But the rules are 18 months.
Yeah.
Or the rules can be stretched to 18 months.
Yeah.
Is that at the? You all work with Mauricio Suleiman, who's a very clever sanctioning body president. He really knows the sport inside out. There isn't a world governing body, so I always talk about it as the Wild West. If business makes sense, it happens in boxing, doesn't it?
Yeah, but like I say again, it should be that he becomes champion in recess, and then the top two contenders, which I guess is Deontay Wilder and Andy Ruiz, could fight for the world title. Maybe that's.
But they tried to make that fight, didn't they?
Yeah,
I mean the WBC have ordered it.
Maybe if it's different, if it's for a world title, maybe that's a different conversation. But look, I get why Tyson Fury's done it, 100%. It's a bit like, how big of an event Jake Paul, I'm not comparing the two athletes, but Jake Paul and Tommy Fury was, right?
Well, it was one of the biggest events.
Huge, right?
Of
but
the
then
year
they
easily,
get in the ring and it's rubbish.
Yeah.
That's a bit like this, and that's nothing against Francis Ngannou. That's just the fact that you've got the best boxer in the world, whose job it is to box. He's been doing it his whole life, and he's been in against the best. And then you've got one of the I don't know enough about UFC and MMA, but what people may say the best heavyweight in the UFC.
No, and he was clearly the best heavyweight at one point.
But if you put Tyson Fury in a cage and you can take him down and give him a headlock and kick him in the head, different story.
Oh, I think they should fight both.
Yeah.
If they do one, they should do the other. In my opinion, I know, but one always beats one in their sport, and the other beats. They're such different sports. Yeah.
So you can be really tough, but it doesn't make you a boxer, does it? And Tyson Fury can't go into the UFC tomorrow and become the heavyweight champion of the world, in my opinion. So completely get it, but I also think from the fans' perspective, look, it's tough because these guys and girls are getting in there to provide entertainment for people, right? And they're getting paid. Like, if people want to pay for it, so there's a value to it.
Yeah.
So
if it's marketable, you can do it.
So let them do it.
In that whole heavyweight division at the moment, I mean, the undercurrent is that boxing's going through a shift. Certainly, heavyweight boxing is, with those offers, or with the willingness of the Saudi Arabians, particularly the Saudi Arabians, to want to make very big fights. So money dictates, money, ego, timing. I always talk about those three things, certainly in heavyweight boxing, and we're seeing it this week with Crawford and Spence, that finally they're getting the right money at the right time in the right place. So you've got the right two guys fighting one of the biggest fights, I think, since Golovkin and Canelo won, or even since Mayweather-Pacquiao, and even though that was past its sell-by date. But if we look back in the heavyweight division, we've been teased a Deontay Wilder fight for 5 years as well. I was looking back at it all the other day. Why did that fight never happen, for example? Was there not enough money on the table? Were both men at the wrong place in the wrong time to have that fight?
Yeah, I think so. Then there was mandatories as well. There's a whole host of things. Look, I'll be honest with you. We've all done so much talking over the years around fights and making fights and trying to make things happen, and it's kind of, let's just try and focus on them actually happening and let the announcements do the talking, because we all want the biggest shows and the biggest events. That's the reality. We're fans as well, and as a business, we want the biggest events possible. And I think sometimes ego may have got in the way. Sometimes characters may have got in the way. People not getting on.
But the chess game as well.
Yeah,
but the chess game of where you're taking
what the journey you're on as well, and
what your own narrative is. Like clearly, Queensberry, Frank and George Warren, and Tyson Fury, they've said, you know what, we're not going to take the Usyk Saudi narrative, we're taking our own. So they've gone in a different direction, left field at the moment. I've always understand it. When AJ and Fury didn't happen last year, I mean, I spoke to you and people made issue of it at the time. I spoke to you and Eddie about it. It was obvious it didn't suit you guys at the time. You can say what you want about it. That was just my opinion. But reading between the lines with it all, I personally don't think Fury fears Usyk or particularly fears Joshua, but I do feel he needs to have those fights before his career's over. My thing at the moment is, let's judge all these guys in 2 years' time, and then we can complain about whether we had those fights or not. Because do you think in 2 years' time we'll have had those very big fights we can't miss? Fury and Usyk, Joshua and Wilder, Joshua and Fury. Those are the three enormous fights that would be a travesty if we don't get them in this era.
Yeah. Look, I can only really talk. I can't even talk on Anthony Joshua's behalf, but I can talk in terms of what I think.
What you'd like.
Yeah. And one thing about AJ, he's never shied away from a test. The Usyk fight, people said, he's going to vacate. Right, he's not going to do his mandatory against Usyk. He took the fight. He went in there against one of the pound for pound today best fighters in the sport. He lost. Right, he went straight back in there again. People said he's not going to do it again. Went straight back in there, and it was a great fight. And he wasn't sort of outperformed. He lost against the best in the sport. But one thing about AJ, he's never shied away from a challenge. I believe you'll see AJ against Deontay Wilder. For sure. I can't talk about Fury Usyk because I think it would have happened by now.
So you're suggesting you don't think it will happen?
I don't know. There's something not quite right there for it not to have happened.
But surely the money wasn't right for Wembley.
I don't think Wembley. I think for some of the other discussions that have been had, the fight should have happened, from what I've heard through the grapevine. But
is the offer there for Joshua and Wilder?
Yes, I mean
but there's no contract signed yet.
No contract signed. But look, the discussion, we've got a great relationship with Prince Khalid and
Skills Challenge. Yeah.
We've delivered some brilliant events together with them. I'm very confident that fight happens. I'm very confident AJ will take every fight. That's what he wants to do. Like I said earlier, he doesn't just want to coast through and just get a few wins. He's about creating a legacy, and so I'm confident from AJ's side the fights will happen. I'm confident you'll see AJ Wilder not taking his eye off the ball of the White fight in August, because it's a real test. And look, I'd love to see AJ Fury. I think it would be a huge event. AJ goes in and beats Wilder. Can you imagine the scale of that fight against Tyson Fury?
Matchroom Boxing USA. I'm surprised you just don't call yourself Matchroom Boxing Global, because you're everywhere, really. You've had a paradigm shift as a company into the USA. Is it 5 years now?
I think we've been nearly 6 or 7 since we signed
Is it that long?
Yeah.
God, is it that long? Okay. That's been a shift for you guys personally, and obviously, there's huge proving and breeding grounds in that area and into Mexico and where you're going with it all. Is boxing itself, though, because of Saudi Arabia, and it's particularly with the heavyweights at the moment, are we going through a seismic change, do you think, in the way boxing is?
I don't think it's just Saudi. I think the global investment in boxing. One thing that's wild about boxing is every year some new people come in, whether it's the UK, US, or another territory with huge interest in the sport. And I think you're going to see continued growth internationally. The discussions we've got ongoing now with 6 or 7 different governments around staging events. We obviously launched in Abu Dhabi last year. We've got a Monaco show returns this year. We were in talks with Malaysia, in talks with Japan.
Malaysia?
Yeah.
Okay.
Lots.
What's going? Why Malaysia then?
It's heavily driven a lot of the time by the tourism departments and bringing major scale events. It's a bit like Singapore's another example of a location where they've heavily invested in sports. They've had the F1 there for years.
Eddie Hearn banging at the door there.
I think he knows I'm late. But that for us is that's definitely the focus for us internationally, and to deliver the best possible opportunities for fighters as well. That they deserve to make every penny they can, and if that means getting opportunities in other territories, then so be it. So we're very much excited by what the future holds, and there's lots of big opportunities out there.
Couple more questions. Terence Crawford, Errol Spence this weekend. As I said, it's an enormous fight, I think, for boxing. It's Vegas. I think it's the biggest fight probably since Canelo and Golovkin won. They are still in their prime. I think we've waited 4 or 5 years for that to happen. Terence Crawford, 7 fights in his 3rd weight division as a world champion, all by stoppage and knockout. How do you see this fight? Why are people calling it so big? Who wins for you?
I sort of keep flip-flopping back and forward. We've done a lot of work. We've done quite a few shows with Crawford, both while he's been with Top Rank, over the years in the UK and in the US. And Spence, look, they're both special talents. I think Terence Crawford will get the win. I don't know if it's because I'm not in the US currently, but it doesn't feel as big to me as the likes of Tank and Ryan Garcia, for example. You know, I think it's a huge fight for the sport of boxing and for boxing
Well,
fans.
there's no trash talk.
No.
So because neither of them do. It's just kind of a slow simmering thing. And also, they don't. These are guys in their early 30s. They don't reach out to that generation like Garcia and Tank Davis do. In that, one is very much street, but very cool street. And I know he comes from a very mixed up background in Baltimore. And then Ryan Garcia is the choir boy with this kind of mental health issues, who's got millions. Probably, I think he's got more social media followers than any other active boxer. So it is different, and those are the milieus we're discussing at the moment, and how you promote things as well. So, but I think for the purist, it's a big fight.
Yeah, but I think that audience is obviously there's a limit, you know, to what that audience is. It's a huge fight, you know, and we've seen some great events this year. So it's great that this fight's been delivered, because it's a fight that many people thought wouldn't happen, and it's good to see it happening not past their prime as well.
If you were promoting it, because I was thinking about this the other day, would you have brought them over on a quick jet trip to the UK? Because there's a lot of desirous fight fans in the UK. Would you have brought them over for a day and a half to sell it here or not?
Personally, no.
Okay,
no.
Just wondered.
I think the fans that are going to be an audience for this fight know about it and are invested. And I think it's going to be hard to, because, like you say, they're not trash talkers. They're not going to be, you know, causing a scene at a press conference. You fly them over.
You can't throw a bomb in the corner and
it's not going.
Million pay-per-view buys?
No, I don't think so.
750?
I think a bit less.
Okay, that's very interesting. But that landscape's changing, isn't it?
Yeah, but I don't think that's anything to do with the fight. I think that's to do with the characters. And you've had a lot of pay-per-views as well in the US. Like I say, you go back to Tank Ryan Garcia, that did over 1.2 million buys or something like that, which is amazing for US boxing especially. And I think pay-per-view's expensive there as well, so it needs to be the right fight to get those sort of numbers. But look, to do 500,000 to 750,000 buys still would be massive. Who's the most fascinating boxer you've ever been around? Fascinating. If you can pick one. So I've ever been around. Well, that's a hard question, that is. Who would it be? Canelo's quite an amazing character. I'm glad you mentioned him, yeah. He's spending time with him, you know, to see what he's come through and where he's come from and what he's done. He's one of those characters who's not flash, but he's just so happy. He's got a great presence. Yeah, great. I've been in this training camp in San Diego, and I was with a photographer I'm doing a book with, Sonia Jasinski, and it was lovely to be around him. And I'm lucky that I speak Spanish, so I'm able to speak Spanish to him. Yeah. And he's got... he's such a megastar. You kind of know it about him. He's like an Ed Sheeran of boxing, isn't he? But he's a very nice man. Yeah, but you know what you find as well when you meet a lot of these people is some people you meet and they just focus their attention on the most important person in that room. And you'll be 10 of you and you'll be having a conversation, but it'll be, you know, for me, I grew up around Eddie basically, and it's like everyone knows who Eddie Hearn is, but who's this little fat kid next to him basically. But Canelo was always very much, if there was a group of you, he'd direct the conversation to the whole group. And I quite like that. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but, you know, you meet a lot of people, and a lot of people don't have those sort of character traits that, you know, sort of bring a fan base. Like, hence why he's built such a fan base, because of the character he is, you know, because he's a nice guy. And he's himself. Yeah, and he's got all the nice things, but he's not flash in a way of being flash. I think it's more a thing he's understated. Yeah, look at what you can do and look at what I've done. Yeah. And that's quite a nice way to be, especially in this world we live in of, you know, of a very impressionable society. Absolutely. Well, finally, the fat little kid grew into a very handsome CEO of Matchroom Sports, who's sitting here today. If you were marooned on a desert island, because I have to ask everybody this in the studio, if you're marooned on a desert island, who's your girl Friday? Who's my girl Friday? What does that mean? Well, the girl that makes your dreams come true on the desert island. Oh, well, there's only one answer. I know. I don't want to get in trouble. There's only one answer. Emily Eubank, you know, because otherwise I would be she would murder me. But she would be my choice regardless. But you mean that anyway, and I know. And just tell me, when and if you and Emily have children, how would you feel about your boys or your girls boxing? Hopefully, if they do, they get their mother's anger and genes, you know, because she's much tougher than me. I'm the soft one. I don't think, if I had a child just like me, I don't think he'd be getting in the boxing ring because he'd be a bit too soft. But definitely, if they get Emily's side, then, you know, good luck to him.
Frank, it's been brilliant having you in the studio. Thank you so much indeed for joining us on Fight Club.
Thanks for having me. Cheers, Gareth.
Brilliant. Well, Frank Smith was an absolutely brilliant guest on this week's show. Thank you for all your questions for him as well. My thanks to Tony Lapidus and to Michael Bisping, the former UFC middleweight champion, for joining us on episode 7. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll be back with you next time. I'm Gareth A. Davies. This was Fight Club.